morning. Here we are with the ENO Business Success Podcast, January 22nd, 24, with Micah Watkins, Jack DeShane, and Phil Guinois. And guys, this is our second podcast.
It's number two.
So, Jack, I think that you had a couple of subjects that we wanted to talk about today. So why don't you kind of kick us off with that?
All righty. Podcast number one was more about who is ENO or what is ENO, and we went through all that. So I thought we would let's hit on three different aspects of what makes ENO different than other networking groups or traditional business networking. And the three that came to mind were culture, empowerment, and innovation. So we'll start with culture. And culture meaning what I think, when you think of culture, for me, I think of environment. A culture creates an environment. And that's what we were basically, what our intention was when we created ENO, was to create an empowerment environment of networking and success. And when we think about environment, then you start to go, what is environment? Like, what do we mean by that? Does that mean the building it's in? Does that mean the people who are in the building? And if you'll really dig deeper and go underneath all that, you'll find out environment is the basic philosophy. It's the language. It's the beliefs of whatever you're in. So I think a good example of an environment and how the actual information of the environment causes the result they were looking for. And I think, if you look at like a 12-step program, that's a pretty powerful example of creating an environment that's going to get a result. And until the 12-step program came around, anybody with the affliction of alcoholism was deemed hopeless, helpless. Like by the biggest psychologist in the whole planet wrote a whole thing on it, that these people are hopeless, helpless, nobody can help them. They will die either drunk or they'll die in an institution or jail. But there is no hope, no medical hope, no psychological hope for these people whatsoever. And then two guys who have the problem, one a doctor and the other one a business guy. One of them a little bit more religious, the other one totally into self-development. He was reading Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People and all the big books. And you look at what they did. They came together and they created a philosophy. They used language to create information, to create an environment and a culture of sobriety, a way to get sober. And then they started bringing in other people and they started building them. Now, if you don't know about this organization, the 12-Step Program organization, well, they're all over the world. And I don't know how many millions of people yearly drop their addictions and are free simply by plugging into this environment. So they have created a culture of sobriety and freedom where there was nothing there before. Humanity normally turns to doctors or the pharmaceutical company to pull these things off. Yet they were able to pull this off with no doctors, no government, no pharmaceutical company, and nobody making any money. Like nobody. Like you sit in there, if you have no money, you just don't do nothing and you still get free and you still get sober. And if you have a buck, you flip it in the little basket so that they can buy some more coffee and donuts or pay for the little room that you're meeting in. But that whole idea of creating environment came to us, and we decided, well, the environment would be empowerment, and it would be success. So we start to create an environment of empowerment and success. So we'll hear a little bit from Micah because Phil came in not long. I mean, we're like 5 months after I bought it or something.
Yeah, I was actually doing a little bit of 1099 business development in the East Valley for you when you took it over.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was around. Micah actually experienced coming into the environment. So he was not in it yet. I believe, if I'm correct, you were already involved perhaps in other networking groups at the time that you found this one. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was all over the place. I was networking everywhere. Now, granted, I was new to Phoenix, I was new to Arizona. I didn't know anyone. So I knew I needed to go out and meet people. And so, the mentors that I had, they're like, hey, well, you go out and network, go find people, go make connections. And, I got connected. And honestly, I met Phil in another group, and there was a connection there. There was a connection, and, some of it was a little bit of familiarity of, past histories. We, did some stuff similarly in our past lives, and we were able to connect there. However, there was something unique about Phil that drew me in towards him, and we were able to develop that relationship. And I remember, being able to confide in Phil in my networking endeavors. I really looked up to him as the networker that he was, because he was able to hold himself in a room, and that said something. So then, I got introduced into, both of your organization and then got to meet you, Jack. And I knew there was something there. There was something. And granted, we're in the middle of COVID and we're dealing with, it's like, what is this, right? And I didn't know you all that well. When I first met you, it was on Zoom.
That's right.
And I was like, I don't know who this Jack guy is. Yet there's something there. And it's like, well, it was unique. And then when you guys, committed to being live in person and rallying around and creating the synergy with the people and the environment and the messages that were, being taught, and just the impact of the language, the words in that environment, I was like, there's something there. That's what and that's why I continued to show up. I was regularly there. I was always there. I mean, again, we're there for business. You never know who you're going to meet. You might meet somebody that, is the next biggest client, or you very well, you're going to meet someone that's going to be your biggest supporter and be able to really, hey, I want to support you. Well, how can I help? You're right. So there was something about the environment that I kept walking into every week and experiencing. That's what kept me around. Then the empowerment stuff started showing up, and I started getting that, and I was like, oh, there's something different here. It's a different energy than any other group that I'm associated with. And that's where, for me, I started to look at, okay, well, this is how this group operates. This group over here operates this way. The groups over here, they operate that way. And all of it was pretty much the same across the board. There really weren't too many. Yeah, this one lent itself, for a particular group of people in particular areas of business. And then this group was ideal for, those businesses and this and that over there. However, there was something different about this and what was being created here. I started to notice I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, oh. However, I was like, it's pretty interesting.
Well, and Jack, if you remember, when we got shut down and we had to go to Zoom, I believe that we did a networking Zoom meeting. However, we also did once a week an empowerment piece into the evening time. Yeah. And I think that was really powerful back then as people were going through a really challenging time in their lives and what was going on in the world with being shut down. Not only did we do the networking piece because we had to be doing that piece, we couldn't do it in person anymore. But then you slipped in that other piece once a week, and we had people showing up in that, and it was just a conversation and an empowerment piece.
Yeah. Yeah. moving back to creating the culture again. So by adding empowerment to the culture. Now, with the cultures and the environment, you do need to watch because it can get tricky. Something can look one way and there'll be some underlying things going on that aren't in line with everything else that's going on. So when you get into an environment, you need to look at all the philosophies and what they're actually about to find out if you have found what we'll call a winning culture. So we all have default culture. That is just whatever group of people get together and they're all there and whatever they got, they got. And it's like in a business. You have all these employees. Some of them are great employees. You're like, you can count on Micah. He'll be there. He'll do a great job. What about Jeff? Jeff's a little iffy. Jeff has bad days. Jeff's performance goes up and down based on what's going on. Why is Jeff here? Jeff's here because, well, at least he'll show up. And you think that's funny? This actually happened. I actually asked somebody whose receptionist was just had no people skills, just repelling people. And this was the first person you're meeting going into this guy to talk to this guy. So when I got to the guy, I was like, so what's the deal with her? And he goes, I know. She's got to learn how to deal with it. She's not going to change. Why is she here? Well, at least she shows up. That was it. I'm like, I don't know. There's like 8 billion other people. You think one could show up with a little smile and a little, hey, how you doing? And make you feel warm and comfy when you come in here? Yet in his mind, no. If you can get him to show up, that's acceptable. So when you're talking about environment and you're talking about creating something that's consistent from the top to the bottom, meaning there's nothing going on in there. I know there's networking groups that have a lot of powerful things about them that attract people. And if you just look, if it's all the way through, then you're going to have a great experience. It's going to be a powerful culture to be a part of. Yet you've got to watch for things that are vibrating lower. Any fear, manipulation, things like that. There's groups that will put a lot of pressure on their own members or restrict them from networking at other places, or even put pressure on them to keep growing the organization, keep bringing people in here, like a lot of pressure. And even in the empowerment part that we do, that is stemming from the empowerment work that I've been doing for 18 years. Even when I created that, it all boiled down to that topic we're going to hit, innovation. It's just really looking at everything else and going, okay, what don't people like about this? So, Phil, actually, you can run them through that example that you do in the Lunch and Learn. You can ask them to close their eyes.
Yep.
If they're not driving, they may be able to do that, but go ahead and lead them through that.
Absolutely. So if you're sitting, close your eyes. If you're driving, please keep your eyes open and on the road. So, one of the things that we do is we have a guest lunch and learn on a regular basis, at least once a month, and we bring guests in to learn about ENO, the Empowerment Networking Organizations. So as you close your eyes, I just want you to go through this experience. So if your eyes are closed, now imagine that you're walking up to the front of a store and you're walking on that first sidewalk leading to the front door, and the store you're walking into is a Circle K. What does the sidewalk look like? Now you're opening the doors. What do the doors look like? And you step inside, and what is that like inside there? From not only the smell, but do you get greeted? What do the floors look like? And then you go and you get whatever it is you're going to get, a soda, whatever it is. And then you get ready and you get to the checkout. What's your experience with the person, behind the counter? And how long does it take you to get checked out? Okay, now keep your eyes closed. And I want you to have that same experience. However, this time, you're walking up that front entrance way, and it's a QT. What does the sidewalk look like outside? And you open the doors, and what do the doors look like? And my God, how many times do you get greeted, like authentically greeted, like they really want you to be there? And how about the floors? Are the floors almost spotless? In fact, they probably got that machine that they run over the floors somewhere in the store, right? And then you get ready to go ahead and check out, and the cashier is like literally a ninja. They're running one or two cash registers at the exact same time, and you're in and out of there in a flash. And here's the crazy part is that, Circle K recently decided that what the difference was and why QT was making such a splash in the marketplace is because of their pizza kitchens. Their pizza kitchens. That was the difference.
That's the key.
Well, I beg to say it's not the difference. It was a complete shift in environment. They're selling the exact same thing at QT that Circle K is. The difference is they created an environment that was inviting and enticing and respectful, all of those things, right? So I always love sharing that with people when we do our lunch and learns. And I was telling you this earlier, Jack, when the people's eyes are closed, I can just, as soon as I mention QT, you can just see the look in their face is like, oh my God, yes, what a huge difference. So back to you on that.
Yeah. And in the environment, whichever one you choose, it's going to create the ultimate thing for all humans. It creates the experience. And everything's about experience. So your experience at QT is going to be different than at Circle K. At Circle K, many times there's a line, one person running one cash register fairly slowly with a line of 5 or 6 people, and you'll just keep waiting and waiting till you get up there. And at QT, they'll be at one register and they have 2 sides. They realize this. So if they're helping this one on this side, the next person on they're like, you can come right over here. And I'm amazed at what's going on because they'll start ringing you up. Well, that guy's still doing whatever he's doing over there. Somehow they keep it all together. They get the change out quick. If that line goes to 3, 4 people, they holler. Other register opens like immediately. There's no, wait a second, I got to get the drawer set. I got to do this. Just boom. And the other register is open. So good luck on the pizza ovens. And keep putting in the electrical boxes so you can make those pizzas and see what happens. But yeah, it is definitely they created a winning culture over there, and that's how they train their people. So they're getting better people. They're getting younger people, better people. They're faster, and Circle K still running through some stuff. And that's all we've done here.
Well, and I know Mike will understand this because we were both in the restaurant business and, for 20 plus years. And, in all the restaurants that I opened and turned around, I could see it with the management that was running the store. And we might have a store 3 to 5 miles away from one of our other locations. And if you had a good environment and by chance you happen to hire let's just say not so good quality employee, they wouldn't last in that environment very long. Right? They would either be asked to leave or they would leave on their own, either way, right? Because it wasn't a comfortable environment for them. And then on the flip side, you could have that other store 3 to 5 miles away that had a mediocre management, kind of like what you were just talking about, the guy with the receptionist.
Yeah.
Well, why is she here? Well, she shows up, right? And if you happen to hire a good quality employee, Micah, did they stick around very long?
Well, absolutely not, because they're not matching what they're looking for.
Yeah.
The energy isn't right, or you could say the amount of integrity wasn't right. It wasn't matching to what they were, the environment that they wanted to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary Elkin, the gentleman that helped create a lot of the full weekend and week experiences with the seminar company I went through. That guy owned restaurants before he became a facilitator. And that's what he told me. He goes, in my restaurants, everything and everybody working in there understood one thing. This whole thing is about an experience for the people coming in. That's all it is. That's all what every restaurant is. So they can have a poor experience or an okay experience, or they can have a great experience or an excellent experience or an outstanding experience. And his restaurants, it had to be outstanding, that they had to come in and have that type of an experience. So culture is a big part of what drove ENO, or the creation of ENO, was the idea of a winning culture, of an empowerment culture, of a success culture, which brings us to America's favorite football team ever, the Detroit Lions, who, by the way, just won the divisional round last night. So in my lifetime, I've seen that, I guess it was once, I forgot. So in 91, when they beat the Cowboys, they had the bye week. So they beat the Cowboys. They did go to the championship game against Washington and got smoked out. So that was the only time in my lifetime that I have seen this happen. That happened last night. So the culture that has been created there by the kneecap biter, which, when he did that first speech, Dan Campbell, when he did that first speech, when he took over the Lions, he got so much. USA Today, I believe it was that one, they called him a meathead. A meathead. Like, he's just a jock. He's a meathead. There's no way he'll succeed as a head coach. He has no experience as a head coach. He has none of this. And then he has the general manager. And those two teamed up, and what they understood was the culture they were going to build. And he explained it in the first interview when they made fun of him. He said, you're going to punch us in the mouth. You're going to knock us down. We're going to get back up. We're going to hit you harder. You're going to hit us again. We're going to go down on the way up. We're going to bite off a kneecap. We're going to hit you harder. But every time you knock us down, we're going to get back up. We're going to hit you again. So they created this culture. And not only that, they avoided the mistake of the guy with the receptionist. You had to fit the culture. And they didn't care about who you were, how famous you were, because I don't know if you ever known this on a football team, but they bring in the superstar, sign him from another team, and you're all happy. But the superstar's it may be a little bit of an egomaniac, maybe a little bit of a I'm better than everyone else, and you bring that into your room, into your locker room, and it starts dividing people, and they don't succeed. Even though they sign the biggest receiver or the best quarterback or whatever, they don't succeed. So what I saw in Detroit was they were not allowing those people in. And if they had one in, they were out quickly to create an environment. And the word they used was grit. Just grit. We're just gritty. And they constantly keep saying this to their play. We're built for this. We're built for this. We're built. We're built to succeed. We're built to play anyone, anywhere, at any time. We are, and that's all they've done over there. They have created a winning culture, and that came out of probably, I would have to say, out of all the 32 teams, Detroit had an absolute losing culture.
Oh, absolutely.
For decades. Like, it didn't matter who came in. You can bring Barry Sanders if you'd like. Greatest running back ever. You can bring in Calvin Johnson, Megatron. Doesn't matter. You can bring in Super Bowl winning coaches. Didn't matter. The culture was so ingrained in losing, it didn't matter who you brought in. They were going to lose. And that made it to where people didn't want to play there. So, like Jared Goff, he was basically exiled from Los Angeles to the worst that could possibly happen. So no players wanted to go there. So it's hard to get good players when you're losers all the time. And now all that flipped. Now players are like, I want to play for that guy. I want to play for that guy. So you can take any culture and take it from a default or a losing culture and create a winning culture. The only thing that you have to understand is how to do that. And that is something that we understand, because before I ever bought any of this, I would go into companies and work with them to create a winning culture from a potentially disastrous default culture that wasn't working at all. That's where ENO, again, separates from the other networking groups. It's empowerment. And then we go into that part.
Well, and I think that's a great thing is, we all have that skill set, right?
Yes.
So you did it, through the empowerment side, and Micah and I actually did that on the restaurant side, specialized in either opening up new restaurants, which was creating it from the ground up, or I did a lot of turnarounds where I would go in and turn around a restaurant that was failing, that was dirty, that, wasn't making money, that had poor service, all of those things, and create that culture. And then, when I went out on my own and started networking to grow my personal businesses after I left corporate America, in one of the networking organizations that I was a member of, I actually became a director, and that same skill set that I used in my restaurant career translated right over into being a director and helping them start chapters, grow chapters, train chapters, turn them around, right? So I think that's unique in that we all have that skill set and that mindset of creating that culture and that winning culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and to elaborate on that, like, okay, that's great. However, what is it? And okay, how do you go in and fix that and tweak it? And how does Dan Campbell do what he's doing? And how, when you're with the empowerment work, Jack, when you were doing that, it's when you're going in, what is the action that we're doing? And I think this is something that we all realized before in our careers, before we got to this point right here, right now, is that when you're able to pour into others, to uplift them, to give them what they need, what they're looking for, to, empower them to be able to be, successful, have the accomplishments, have the support behind them. When we're able to pour into those people, that's the action that creates the result of the winning culture. So, and remember, there was a particular unit that I had to go in with a new company. I recently got hired. They had canned the chef before me. It was a losing culture. There were disgruntled employees. There was basically a mutiny about to happen. So they knew they had to can this guy and bring me in, or they were going to lose the entire kitchen, and that would just be a disaster. Because you're talking about I don't even remember, probably a $15 million operation. It's just astronomical. So in that environment, so. I came in, and it was just that I had to pour into the people that were there, and listen to them, feel out what was it that they needed to be successful. What was it that they were looking for? And honestly, it was the support. They needed somebody to acknowledge that, one, they existed, and two, that they wanted to be appreciated for the hard work that they were putting into. And that wasn't what they were getting. So I found, wow, if all I do is pour into these people, that'll create what I'm looking for. And it did just that. I was there for a year and a half, and all of a sudden, all the employees that were there, they would do anything that was needed for the benefit of the team.
A simple thank you at the end of their shift a lot of times, right?
Absolutely. Something so simple. So then even now, when we look at, well, what are we doing now? We look at ENO, and I see all three of us pouring into all of our members. How can we provide as much value for them so that they are in the environment and the culture that they can succeed in? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's why people would join a networking organization. They're looking to grow their business. They're looking to, expand and grow. And is this the environment that they're going to be able to do it? Absolutely. I was even doing the podcast and being, at some point here, we're going to be bringing in, members, and it's just added value. And we're able to pour into them.
And it's interesting, and I think this is a great place that we can transition to our next topic too, Micah, is that the restaurant, right? So turning a restaurant around, and it's no different here because, we had a default culture 4 years ago when we took over the organization and bought it. But once you get that rapport built, and it doesn't take a lot. Dan Campbell did this. I don't watch that much football, but once you have a handful of people behind you, then they hold the culture in place, right? So employees in the restaurant held the culture in place and wouldn't allow those other employees to cut corners, right? It kept getting a stronger and stronger culture. Same thing in the Lions football team, right? Pretty soon, everybody is making the culture happen, and that's what's happened here for us as well. And I think that's really awesome is that we've started something, and now it's growing beyond what the three of us do right here. It's living out there with our people.
Yes, and that's why Dan Campbell is so effective. Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end, who is breaking all rookie tight end records and all that stuff, they interviewed him yesterday or the day before, and they asked, just give us a Dan Campbell moment. And he smiles and he's like, well, there's one from a few days ago or a couple games ago or whatever. Play went off. I missed the block. Somebody else had to take the block, and he goes, and I look over, and I see Dan Campbell's face, and it's all red, and he's screaming at me. And, even though there's a stadium full of people and all this noise, I can hear him all the way across the field, and all I hear is, Laporta, you're better than this. You're way better than this, man. So, the difference between telling somebody that, even though you're screaming it at him with intensity, as opposed to what the is wrong with you, and benching them or screaming at them in their face when they come over the sideline, which I've watched coaches do this all the time, screaming so the player's terrified. Instead, he's screaming at him empowerment. You are better than this. You're better than this. And I thought, that's fabulous to hear that was his approach to take with his own players.
Well, and what you were describing before, that was default, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What were you thinking? What do it's not.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, it doesn't empower anyone. And now all of a sudden, again, we're back into fear. We're back into scarcity. We just shrink. Every time we drop into those feelings, we're going to shrink. Yeah. However, you're better than that.
Yeah.
It's like our children. Even it's how you raise your children too. It's the words that we're using, right? That can empower or can diminish
or can tear down. So yeah, I think it's a default. I think it's the military beat down. It's like beat you down and then we'll lift you back up again. And they're just not doing that. And this is what we've always done in the seminar work. It's no beat down and the culture that we build here. So we avoid things in ENO that I see in other networking groups and other groups in general. We avoid cliques. Why don't we have cliques? Why aren't they there? Well, for one, if you design a networking group and you're going to push your own growth onto your members, meaning if they're not bringing enough guests, you are going to be on them over it. You're going to do that. When you start to play that game, what's going to happen when this member brings in more guests than that member?
Yep.
So you're going to start doing favoritism to that member. So they're going to start to be able to come into the cliques because they're above everybody else because they bring more to you. When we got into here, since our intention, our noble cause is the success of the members, then we say, well, now it would be our job to bring the members. They're here to grow their business. That's why they paid us. to facilitate networking events where they can grow their business. It's our job to grow the members. Now, if you do that correctly, they'll bring the guest because they notice there's no clicks. Who actually likes the clicks? Only the people in the click. The rest of the people don't like the clicks at all.
Well, and this click doesn't like that click.
Yeah, and then you get all that. And I notice in ENO, you don't see that. You don't see that because of the empowerment training.
Well, and I think one of the other things is, and you mentioned this, is, other organizations, a lot of force or focus, I'll put it that way, is on bringing members to the organization. And let's face it, it's a brilliant business model, right?
Sure.
Works really well, keeps the budget low on marketing, right? However, over here with us, we always say we're going to build the cake. We're going to bake the cake, which is bringing guests and becoming members to the organization. It's probably going to take a little bit longer for us to bake that cake than the other way around.
Yes.
However, we're going to build it. And if one of our members brings a guest, and even if it's just a guest and they never join, or they become a member, all that member is now doing is just adding a little frosting on the cake with us. We're doing the basis of all of it. They're just playing in the frosting with us.
That's it. And there's going to be times where you'll have a member who's more effective at bringing guests and has more influence, or we know them out there. They're just people. They know everybody. They're going to bring more guests. And then you're going to have another person who comes in and they may be an accountant or something, and they're a little bit more introverted and they just do their books and they want to get some new business, but they don't socialize a lot. They don't know a ton of people. Why should they be treated any differently at all? They've paid the same price to be there. They're both appreciated for who they are and what they can do. Just that type of environment, creating that creates a place where everybody, after they're there for a while, understand, okay, so we're all treated the same. We're all treated the same. And these guys care about us, and I hear about that all the time. It's apparent you guys actually do things based on how you're going to affect us.
Well, and, having built 3 businesses through networking like this over the last 30 years and being, a director in one of those other networking organizations. Here's the other thing that I've seen, Jack, is, you do have those people that come in that are the connectors that are going to bring guests. They're just really good at it.
Yes.
However, on the flip side, I've seen over the last 30 years where somebody comes in and maybe they're a little bit more of an introvert. They're a little bit more, shy and whatnot. Give them time. Let them get into the culture, and sometimes they'll really surprise you, and they'll hit their stride at a different time than somebody else.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true. If the culture's supporting it, they'll be able to do that easily. So let's get to the innovation part. So networking groups, and I've been a part of several networking groups, and we get into the chamberish thing, which we do. That's why I love ENO. It's got everything. It's got the chamberish stuff, the lunch, the mixers. All members can show up, and you network and you do your thing. Then they have the collaborative mastermind groups. Now those resemble more to me the networking groups I've been a part of. The chamber stuff is the lunches, mixers. These are where it's individual, it's exclusive. You're the only realtor in there. You're the only mortgage person. In my experience in all of them, the ones Dan and I went to in California, the couple we joined out here, 3 of them out here, and only one was a chamber. The other ones were those groups. And what I experienced was we went there every week, and we did a commercial, 30 or 60-second pitch. And we basically did the same one every time, whatever our pitch was. I mean, some people would just change a teeny bit of it or something, but normally you're just saying the same thing. And then you sit there for 52 weeks, or 50 if they take a couple weeks off for holidays, and you have maybe 10 or 15 or 20 people there. So do you get business? Yeah. Why? Because you've shown up every week and there's 20 people here. So the odds are somebody at some point is going to know somebody that needs an accountant.
Are you saying even a blind squirrel can find a nut once in a while?
You're going to get something just by being there. So as long as you'll show up, you could definitely get enough business to justify your investment, at least your cash investment. I don't know totally if time investment was met, but at least the cash investment. And then we decided to start the mastermind groups. We were operating more like a chamber, just lunches and mixers and some big events and things like that. We decided to start the collaborative mastermind groups. And then that's where Phil and Micah took on that idea of looking at something, like I did with the seminar company 18 years ago, looking at the big guys, the big players that had been around a long time, and then just finding out what don't people like about this and how could this be a better experience. And then I just did what I heard from everyone who was plugged in for 20 years. Well, we don't like this and we don't like that, and we think it'd be better if you did that and that. And I was like, okay, thank you. I'm not like a genius or anything. I just talked to a bunch of them and went, okay, so we won't do this, that, and we'll do that. So when it got down to creating the mastermind groups, that's where you two sort of took the ball and ran with it and created something that, as I said, looked good on paper, yet we wouldn't know until they are manifested whether they're going to get the result we're seeing on the piece of paper. And I think probably within 6 weeks to 2 months, based on me popping into a mastermind group and hearing what people were telling me, I was like, oh, it happened. The result is here. So if you guys want to sort of talk about how you change that model of just showing up 52 times a year to tell the same commercial to the same group of people and attempt to get your 3 or 4 referrals that year, what did you guys come up with?
Well, I think, Micah, we just stumbled to some extent, right? We just stumbled
absolutely.
across the concept, because we were doing 2 lunches. We were doing a lunch in kind of the North Phoenix, Scottsdale-ish area, and then we had one going down in the Chandler area on the opposite day, right? And it was working. It just wasn't working as well as we'd like it to, and there was some inconsistencies. And I don't even know really how it came about, but it was just some conversations over probably a 3 to maybe a 5 week period that we were just talking about different things, and then all of a sudden it just kind of light bulbs started going off for us. So what do you kind of remember as the first thing of like, oh my gosh, this might be something?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we totally stumbled over it. It was like tripping over this rug right here. There's just like this hump in the rug, and we just boop. And so, my if memory serves me correctly, what I remember was, a lot of my experience in some of these other groups was frustration. It was straight up. I had some frustrations about it. It was like, I was like, can this be done better? And what if we eliminated, I just remember, like, what if we just eliminated all this fluff? You go to all these other groups and it's like, there just seems to be like, a good half an hour, if not more, of simple fluff in this meeting. Like, what do we need all the fluff for? Right? I mean, Jack, even in the empowerment training that you do, you took a 40-hour, course and shrunk it down to like 20, 22 hours, and essentially you removed the fluff.
I took the fluff out.
Yeah. Who wants the fluff? I mean, sure, if I don't know who wants the fluff. Maybe if I'm watching like a super awesome movie, and I just never want it to end, maybe like throw some fluff in there because I'm just really digging it. However, most people, let's think about the attention span of most people, right? It's shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. We're in an environment and a society of, hey, I want it now. We can stream it on our phone. We can watch TV on our phones now. I mean, like everything we can get is like right now. So I know for me, like there was a lot of frustrations in how I was marketing my business and was this producing the results that I wanted? And I remember looking at that and go, and I think that's where really we kind of started to stumble across this and said, okay, well, how can we make it better? What can we do to pour into others, pour into the people, create it so that it's actually going to create what they want. And I mean, I think really at the end of the day, what does anybody want to do in this environment? They want to grow their business. So what actions are we going to do to implement that? And I think that was really kind of the base point. And then we said, okay, well, if we remove the fluff and we simply do what we do that we're currently doing in those mastermind groups, that's a lot of power right there.
Yeah, and I think, the other piece is that, we were noticing that with our lunches, there was, because we weren't in the lunches, we don't have an attendance requirement, and which is more like the chamber side or a lot of networking organizations that don't have an attendance policy. Well, the challenge with that is we would have a really good lunch and then we'd have a so-so lunch, right? And that was both North and East Valley. And we were realizing we needed something that people could come to on a regular basis, that they would come to on a regular basis to create the results for them. So I think that was part of our conversation is what would that look like? And I remember having a conversation and, in several of the groups that I've been in, they were 40 to 80 member organizations or groups, right? And it was really hard to develop deep relationships. And as a certified networker, one of the conversations that we had, Micah, is that, most businesses only need 8 to 10 really strong, collaborative-minded partners out there to send them all the business that they need. The challenge was in larger group meetings, that wasn't happening. And if it was with just a very few people that you could get to that level. So that's part of what had us start talking about this was what would that look like if there was a smaller group?
Well, and I think too, like as we developed and continued that conversation and really we didn't have any formula or structure or anything. I think really it was like, well, what if we create these groups, however, hold these lunches that we were continuing doing as a way for other members of those other smaller groups to then come together and be able to collaborate that way, or be just, be in a celebration of each other that, hey, look, like my business is thriving over here. Oh, hey, my business is thriving over here too. And then there's a way where they can still connect in an environment that is still incredibly empowering. And, who knows, there might be business that happens there, yet they're not in the same group. But if we're not bringing it to the forefront and creating that environment for them, will they do it on their own? Well, some might. That's a small number.
Yeah.
It's a small number. However, if you provide the opportunities for people to show up, right? Simply, a lot of people just need the opportunity presented in front of them and the ability to make the choice. Well, either I go or I don't go. And if I don't go, well, we know what the result will be, right? If I do go, what is the potential result? And that is endless. We don't know what could happen. I mean, a very huge number of things can happen, right? So I think a lot of it was really, as we were talking through that, okay, here, these smaller collaborative mastermind groups will be dynamic. It will, we, in theory, right, we were like, oh, this will produce the results people are looking for. Hell yeah, right? And then, Jack, I love it. I mean, it's like, yeah, it looks good on paper until you execute. And then we executed it, and then that's what it's doing right now, right? However, I get so excited about this, because who's out there, what groups are out there really bringing people together to develop that collaboration. And, I've had multiple conversations with financial advisors and life insurance professionals where it's like, look, you guys can collaborate together, and this is how. And it opens people's minds when they're like, oh, I didn't even realize that opportunity.
Yeah.
Or what other business? I mean, there are other businesses out there that, they think of each other as as competition. Yet if they switch, just shift just slightly. Again, it goes from the Dan Campbell comments of, you're better than this, right? That's the collaboration piece of what we're putting together and what we've put together really in the environment that we're doing here in ENO.
Yeah.
And then each week we're continuing to innovate. And we're like, okay, well, what's the next step? What can we do better? Right. And I think, on that, with that, I mean, we've all heard the talks and people read books, all that stuff. And there's a couple of books out there. They talk about the 1%, right? You can better yourself 1% each day. What's that equate to yearly? Well, that's a 37% increase yearly if you are consistent with 1% increase each day.
Yeah.
That's massive.
Well, and you mentioned something earlier, Micah, that, people their attention span's getting, tighter and smaller and everything, right? And, everybody wants instant gratification. And what's happened and what we've designed by stumbling across it, right, to a great extent in the masterminds is that instant gratification in the give and the ask that we do. Which, for our listeners, a give and an ask is quite a bit different than the commercial you're doing at a networking group. However, it's related. So you'd have to come to one of our mastermind groups to really see the difference. But what happens is, in that mastermind group, everybody is giving to that person when they get done doing their give. So they're getting instant gratification from upwards of 15 other members in that meeting. And they're walking out with a sheet full of things to work on, to follow up on, collaborative ideas that they're not getting anywhere else in networking. They're getting a sporadic here or there referral, but they're not getting that. They're not getting instant pouring into right then and there, that instant gratification.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Phil, because, that's the society that we live in right now. And it's honestly, it brings joy to me to watch people get what they're looking for. To have the opportunities to increase their business, to grow their business. That's why they're doing this. And when we look every week, I get to sit there and watch it. Holy smokes, how crazy is that? That is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's awesome to watch.
On Friday, Micah, you and I, and we do this every once a month on the third Friday of the month, we do a live give and ask Zoom training for members and new members coming in. And we just did this last Friday. And it was amazing. You could see the light bulbs going off with people that are brand new to our networking organization and just joined a mastermind group. And so they kind of needed to figure out, what is this give and ask, to those that have been around for 4 years with us and that have been networking for years. Like, you could literally see the light bulb going off in their head and whatnot, like, oh my God, this is making sense, right? Now, here's the really cool part. They're going to be able to translate that over to their networking everywhere else. So not only are they getting more with the mastermind group and that instant gratification, they're going to be more effective everywhere else they network as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And effectiveness, and, that's the crux of it. That's the more effective you can be, you're going to produce results.
Yep.
Yeah, there is there's a group in Vegas that is business owners, and you have to actually get nominated into the group. You're not able to just join. Somebody in the group has to nominate you in, and then you go through a process, and if they agree, then you're in the group. And then the group sits and does what I am watching in the mastermind groups we have. Like that group, that's all they do, the same thing. So they go around the room, people have challenges. So they put the challenge out there. They may need a new assistant. They may not able to figure this out. How do I transfer my business from local right here to the internet? How do I expand? And how do I do it? Well, they're in a mastermind basically with other business owners. So instead of one mind, this is the beauty of the 12-step program. One alcoholic mind is pretty much helpless against alcohol. Yet once they plug into that program, it's not just them anymore. They have a sponsor. They have 25 people. They can call them anytime. I think I'm going to drink. They're like, hold on, I'll come and pick you up. We'll have a cup of coffee. So they've taken their mind and just connected it to, this is the definition of a mastermind. One or two minds pointed in the same direction in harmony. So that group spends, I believe, it could be $10,000 a year to be a part of that group, to get that power. So now I'm in the mastermind group going, well, that's what we're doing is exactly what, there's no difference. They're not magical. They had $10,000. They might have more money, but they're not magical. They're not, from a different dimension. They're just sitting here going, oh, you have that issue? I already did that. I have a connection for that, whatever. I see that going on. And then to watch them walking out with anywhere from, we'll say, 2 to 6 leads every week.
Yeah.
That's where I went, okay, that's it.
Well, and you mentioned, you just mentioned something, Jack. They paid tens or thousands of dollars to be in, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I actually just did a video testimonial with one of our members that's in a mastermind group. And he shared with us he's in 2 traditional mastermind groups that he pays over $10,000 each. So that's more than $20,000 a year. And he did not renew either one of them this year because ours is producing more results than the other 2 combined. And so for our listeners out there, we're not a true mastermind group and we're not a true networking group. It's kind of a hybrid between a networking group and a mastermind.
Yes.
And so it's, again, there's the innovation in it, right? It's bringing the 2 together. And so one of the things that Micah and I and Jack always encourage our members in the masterminds is when you're there, spend about 70% of the time doing your give and ask that's going to help you grow your business, going to bring revenue in the door. And then you're going to have about 30% of that time that you're going to need support in some area of your business or your life that is not necessarily revenue related. And that's where the mastermind piece comes in. And then the last piece that I'll say on that is that happens in every single meeting.
Yes.
You may give a give that, is about revenue for your business, but somebody may not have something to contribute to you in that area, but they have a collaborative thought. So that's where the mastermind piece comes in. So it's literally incredible what happens.
It is mind-blowing, and it transferred from paper, from the invisible thoughts you had, to paper, to actually manifesting, and there's more groups manifesting. Gentlemen, it looks like we have about a minute left. There's a gracious timer on here I didn't notice before. So that will help us keep us on time. We are down to about a minute. Anything else before we end this one?
I just like to take the time to say, holy smokes, again, we're sitting here, we're creating on purpose.
Yeah. Creating on purpose. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up and see everybody, or now they'll hear us. We don't see, they don't see.
Well, soon to see us, right?
Yeah, I'll see you guys. But thank you for joining us. podcast number 2 in the books.
And for our guests out there, you can find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, Empowerment Networking Organization Facebook group. You can also find us on our website at www.enosuccess.com. enosuccess.com.
That's it. Have a great week.